Hey friends, welcome back to Kingdom Life Unfiltered. Today we are diving into a topic that many Christian parents wrestle with, and I know I have in the past as well. So, how do we talk to our kids about sex in a way that is age appropriate and biblical and not awkward? My guest today is Kristen Miele, the owner and founder of Sex Ed Reclaimed. Kristen is a sexual health educator for 15 years now, and she has built an incredible resource for Christian families, a full video library that helps parents teach their kids from ages 3 to 18 about God's design for sexuality with confidence. She lives in Ohio with her husband and two girls. Kristen, thanks so much for joining me today. Welcome.
Thank you, Janeen. I really appreciate being here and getting to talk to your audience and encourage more people on how to do this crazy, tricky thing called sex ed within the home.
Yeah, I'm so excited because this is like not a topic that I could talk about without laughing. So I love how you do it. You are so good. All right, so let's start with what led you to create Sex Ed Reclaimed, and why was this something that you felt like, was a burden on your heart? Like, what was it that made you think this is what I'm supposed to do? I feel like this is such a unique calling.
It is a unique calling. It's not common. I frequently have said in the past that nobody grows up wanting to be a sex ed teacher. And then I did a podcast with the sweetest couple, and she was like, I did meet people who wanted to be a sex ed teacher. But I did become a sex ed teacher when I was in grad school, and that was by assignment. That wasn't by choice, really. But I felt an initial resistance to that because of the way I grew up. My family was is great, but they were really silent on this topic, and we never really talked openly about anything in regards to it. And so I figured because of that, which is how many people still grow up, and your listeners will relate,
Yeah.
because of that, it is bad. Because I never had conversations about it, it must be because it's bad. And so then when I was assigned to teach it for part of my graduate degree, I was really like not good at it. I did a very mediocre job. My students rated me mediocre reviews consistently that first semester, and I felt awkward and like it was not something I should be doing because of my background and being a Christian. And then I had a prayer time that December, that first semester, and felt really convicted about no, there's no reason that you shouldn't be talking about sex because Christians should talk about sex. That's my topic. I created it. I had a really peaceful time with in that prayer and with the Lord. And after that, my teaching was so much better. And I ended up winning like this award a year later, the teaching assistant of the year. And my university had 30,000 kids. So it felt very special to me. But if anything, it felt like I had overcome this fear. And I only did that because I felt a peace and prayer of this is a good topic. It's just that the world does whatever they want with it. And we see how that goes, right? There's constant, you can barely go a day without hearing some story of sexual abuse or grooming or somebody who's transitioning or things in politics. Like it is constant. And of course I didn't know that's how the world was going to be, but it was already beginning 15 years ago when it wasn't beginning, it had been around. It just was a little bit more, spotty with how much conversations were happening in the public sphere about it. But now it's just so constant. And of course, now there's social media. So the need for sex ed in the home has risen even in the last 15 years to like a staggering degree. Like if you are listening to this and you have kids and you have not talked to them and your kids are over 2, you need to start. Period. End of story. I'm not trying to be pushy or rude in that. I just really want to encourage you to start because the world has already gotten started with your kids. And particularly if they ever have access to devices, man, it is all out there. And we know that, but there's still this mentality in parenting, especially in faith-based homes, I find, where it won't happen to my kid and my kid is too innocent. I just had a mom this weekend at a conference. I was telling you I was at a conference. 15. Her son's 15. She said, my son's 15, so we haven't really done this yet. And in my head, I just thought, what? Like, how? I don't understand. And this is a good mom who loves her kids, cares about them, and she has had multiple kids. This is not her firstborn. And I just thought, I don't know how that still prevails in people's minds that my kid is 10, so they don't need this yet. My kid is 12, so maybe we'll get started. It's like, no, you should start immediately
Yeah.
with healthy conversations around the body and around God's design, right? If you're following God's design. Like all of these things should be happening naturally in your home. The point of contention is just how to do them. And so that's really where my passion continued because I do know how to do them. I have an example of how to do them well and not awkward, but engaging and fun.
Mm, fun. I love
Hmm.
that.
It's fun. I
I
like it.
know.
Which I never would have guessed. Like
Right.
2010 me never would have pictured me here. Even 2020 me. I went on the overseas mission field for years and I thought, well, I won't be doing sex ed over there. Like that's not where sex ed. I ended up doing it because people were like, what? You talk about this? Can you teach the women? Like, we don't know anything. Can you talk to the kids? They all have access to devices, even though it was a poor country. They all had phones. So, they're seeing things like, and it was a pretty religious country that we were in when we were on mission. And
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like porn is the great
Okay.
equalizer. They've all seen things. So I have never stopped doing this. I just keep getting asked and encouraged and then I've realized like, no, this is 100% what I'm supposed to be doing anyway. So it's great.
Aw. Well, I love that you have figured out your zone of genius, that the reason that God has created you, and you do it in such a way that doesn't feel awkward. And I think it's so important too that we, as parents, I feel like sometimes when we feel overwhelmed or we don't know how to do something, we just don't do it. But it's so important to not skip this part because it can cause some severe damage in so many different ways, not only with I mean, just what the world is getting at, it just is scary to know what could happen. There's so many things that could happen at this point, and we know them all because of social media. And I mean, it's just getting more and more trendy to kind of steer off the path that God has created us for. And I think sometimes that as teens, especially if they don't understand the way God has created us and really has normalized that leading up to that point, I feel like that trendy worldly view becomes really easy to lean towards. So one thing that I love about your approach is just how it really just removes shame. So, how do you encourage parents then who maybe feel like they missed the window, like we had talked about with their kids, and maybe their kids are already teens or preteens or have already probably come across things? What can they do now?
Yeah, they can still start. They can still start. And I think depending on how old your kids are, if you feel like you missed the window because of just what I said earlier, you've already been feeling that way, that's a good place to start then with prayer and discernment and conversations with your spouse around, hey, we need to get going on this. Like let's go. And I do think it's really appropriate then to acknowledge with your teen or preteen, hey, I need to talk to you about some things. And I'm going to be honest with you, I never have really talked about them with you, except for that one time, whatever, because I don't know how to talk about this and it was never modeled for me. But I've realized that not talking about it can actually hurt you a lot more than if I just pretend like nothing's going to happen. Like that's not good for you, and that's not good for me if I just continue on in silence or in a mode of pretending, right? So I want to confront the elephant in the room. We're going to start having more conversations about sexual health. And I understand if that makes you feel awkward, but I want to make sure that you're safe. I want to make sure that you're healthy. And you know what? It doesn't have to be that big. Like it really depends on you and your child and the setting, but it is okay to say, this is why I'm doing this. Instead of setting it up to be this big thing because you've never done it before,
Right.
or because you yourself are a little bit afraid of it. So it just becomes big in your head. Um, just say, I want you to be safe. Or I never had these conversations. So by the time I got my period, I was freaking out that I was dying, or whatever it is. I mean, these are real
Was.
stories we have, right? Or I got married and I actually didn't know anything about sex, and that wasn't good for me.
Yeah.
And so many people used to have conversations with their kids on their wedding day or the night before, and that's so inappropriate because it doesn't actually prepare them. But God really cares about this. And so we really care about it. And we want you to be safe. Whatever it is, like just say it and make it approachable, but recognize that you need to talk about this because you have and you've seen that that hasn't benefited families or children. And so you're going to start. And that just gets them in the mindset of, okay, my mom or dad is going to do this, or we're going to approach this, or we're going to start watching curriculum or reading some books together. And it's because my mom loves me or my dad, wants to talk to me. Like, that's a good thing. Even if your kid seems a bit awkward initially from it. They will respect that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and so my brain just went to how do you then talk to adult children or like older teens? Like, are you talking about, because it just dawned on me. I have adult children and we're always really, really open, but I have all boys. And even though we talk about everything, I mean, everything. But I'm just thinking about like, what is the proper way to really explain to them as they're older? Like, do you explain how to have sex? Because here's the thing, if we're not explaining it, they're looking it up.
Yes. Yeah, I do. I actually start explaining what the act of sex is. I have a video of this in my 7 to 10-year-old curriculum, which I originally, when I created the curriculum, did not have for years. Because to me, that's still quite young, even as a sex educator, to be explaining the mechanism of sex itself. There's so many other issues or conversations to have around sexual health than the act of penetrative sex alone. That's not
Well,
what sex ed
yeah,
is. Sex ed is
right.
so much bigger, right?
Totally.
But I did end up doing that video content for kids because I was asked so often, and so again, I explain it really simply, really comfortably of just how does the sperm get to the egg? The penis is inserted into the vagina.
Right.
Sperm leave the man's penis. They meet up with the egg, right? This is through the act called sex. It is very intimate. It's very special. It's not to be treated lightly or like it's nothing, etc.
Right.
So very factual. Um, and I would say yes, older teens probably already know what what it is anyway. So you don't necessarily have to go there, but I do think it's good to start with like, what do you know about sex? Or like, what have you learned about sex? And I know, honey, you might feel awkward when I ask that, but it's so important. Again, talk about safety, talk about your myth, like how you didn't have this conversation as a child. Talk
Right.
about purpose and design and how much you love them, how much you care about them. Okay, they're in a dating relationship. You want that to be healthy. Whatever is in their life and whatever is in your heart that you're getting at, share that and show them this is the foundation. I recognize you're 17. I recognize you're going to be in college next year or
Yeah.
yeah, next year, by August of next year. Before you go, we need to start having these conversations before you leave the home because they are really important. You might want to know a lot, you might want to know nothing, but I want you to be prepared. And they're already going to know so much. And so as long as conversation, you can keep having it. It's not like a one-time thing or some big weekend you now need to have with your 18-year-old. You can simply have it habitually, like over time, use examples around you, talk about the news you're consuming together, movies, TV shows, their friend groups, what's happening in their world by seeing where they're at with their worldview. Like, what do you think about that? Have
Right.
your friends ever done that? I had a girl once approach my table who was 18 and she thanked me. I was at a big homeschooling conference actually, and she approached me and she was alone, which I thought was weird because most kids at the conferences are with their parents. And she said, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it because I didn't really have anything like that. I said, okay, well, can you tell me more about that? Because it just seemed like there was a story there because I didn't know who she was. And she said that when she was 16, she started dating a family friend. The whole family loved them dating, kind of joked about how they'd get married. It was so sweet, this couple, blah, blah, blah. Well, the guy was older, a little bit older at that point, but they had grown up together. And eventually he did ask her for pictures. And she had never had conversations with her parents about sexting or manipulation and dating relationship power dynamics. No, nothing. So she did send them and he did share them. And he actually went to jail because where she was at the time, the age of consent. Anyway, so to this day, right, they had no contact and it was just this horrible thing. And she was still dealing with it. 2 years later, it still just weighed heavily on her. And she told me, and she is not the only one who's told me this. And it almost makes me mad because it's such a simple solution. But she told me if my parents had talked to me about sexting, I genuinely don't think I would have sent pictures. And that's not just to blame her parents, right? But it is a recognition of if I had had these conversations from some source growing up, I wouldn't have done it. I really don't think I would have. And that is true for kids. It's true for all kids. Not all kids will listen. But it is true for some. And that is life changing. And so even if they're older, to say, do you know anybody who's ever sexted? Oh my gosh, mom, no, I swear I don't. Okay, are you sure? Because I just want to tell you, it is so unsafe. It doesn't even matter if you're in love with that person, you think you're going to marry them. You have no idea what's going to happen in those photos. Like, have you ever heard
Totally.
any stories about sexting? Right? Just prevention of these really harmful, unhealthy behaviors that are so tempting to a young kid.
Yeah. And that's something that like most parents don't think about talking. Even if they've had the
No.
talk with their kids, they're like not thinking about that. They're not thinking about all the different things and all the, those tough topics. Because I mean, you really address those tough topics, like not just that, but like pornography or gender identity or like all those things that our kids are exposed to so early. And so, what would you say to parents that are nervous about talking about those things because they're afraid it's opening the door to them when they're too young? Because I feel like that's what a lot of parents are thinking is, oh, they're too young to know about that.
Right. That's so, so, so prevalent. If you think that, it's not because research shows that, and it's not because it's true for the vast majority of kids. It's because you're afraid.
Yeah.
And fear is not a good place to start with. It is a motivator, but it's not the best place to start with. And I am just always reminded that we're commanded not to be afraid. I mean, I've heard it 365 times. It's listed in the Bible. Do not be afraid. And so I would press into why am I afraid to talk to my kid about this? What is holding me back from talking to my 5-year-old about porn? It might be practically that I just don't know how to talk to them about that. Do I use the word porn? What if they then go Google it because they do have a device? What if they talk about it with their friends or shout out at the grocery store? Those are legitimate
Those are.
concerns,
Yeah.
right? And you don't talk about a porn with a 5-year-old necessarily. I use the term bad pictures and talk about disrespectful pictures and what to do practically if somebody ever shows you a picture of somebody who's naked or a video. If somebody tries to take a picture or video of you, it is hard to know how to talk about those things, which is why I created this curriculum. But if you're starting from a place of fear, you don't want to take away their innocence, or you think that it's not a correct thought. I'll tell you that you're not taking away their innocence. The world's already chipping away at that. It's been doing that for years, millennia. But you could pray about that. Lord, why am I afraid to talk about this? Is it that I just don't feel I have the tools? Is it that my spouse doesn't know how to do this, or my spouse has a porn addiction and now I'm just feel so I'm struggling with that, and so I'm afraid if I talk about it with my kids, they're going to start and they're going to be like him, right? This could be multifaceted as to why you as an adult are afraid to talk to your kids. Is it because your parents, there's an abuse in your story that you've never really dealt with? Like, do you need to seek out counseling, or is it really I need to pray, I need to journal, and I just need to begin and let go of that fear and give it to the Lord because God's not worried or anxious about these conversations with your kids at all. So you're not gonna take away their innocence or like destroy them by talking to them about this topic. But what will destroy them in regards to sex is the world. Like
Yeah.
it's just a dark place and it's ready to do all sorts of things. So, like, I don't know. I think if this is a random example, but it's coming to my mind. I'm going to share it. My
Yeah.
daughter, I talked about gay families with her at 3. People it's like, what? That's so young. She
Right.
doesn't need
She's
to
gonna
know
see
about
them.
that. And I literally just saw these comments trending on a YouTube video the other day. Why would you talk about LGBTQ stuff with a 3-year-old? Blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? One of her best friends has moms, multiple moms. Okay, she's going to learn about that from her or from schooling or from places where we go frequent, right? There are gay people in the world. They are. They very much exist. They're very real. And instead of her learning from the world on what that means and is and should be or shouldn't be, like, she's going to hear from me. And so she heard quite young, like, yes, she has same sex parents who are married because they can get married in this state, in this country, right? But our family thinks this about the way God designed families. And we think this because, and then we go back to the Bible. And so you can make that conversation however long, short, repetitive you want. But if you don't talk to your kids about it, then they will be discipled by the world. And that is not the point of having children. We're supposed to disciple.
Yeah, definitely. And if we're not telling them what we believe, then they're gonna go find something to believe, really. I mean,
Yeah.
especially with everything going on in the world right now, especially just with Charlie Kirk passing and all of that and just that whole mess, I feel like it's just kind of really come up. And he was one that did he opened up the conversation. I know there's so much controversy over it, and it's I mean it's hard to even know. I didn't watch all the debates, so I can't tell you he for sure never said this or he for sure said this in this way and it was this. But I feel like really what it comes down to is making sure that we're having those conversations and opening up the ability to talk through them with them. Because if we're not
Hmm.
talking through them, then they're just going to form their own opinions, and that can be really dangerous.
Exactly. And how many kids, speaking of, an influencer like him, are discipled by TikTok and Instagram? And of course, he was arguing or debating with people on college campuses in order to impact their lives and the general conversation. But like, our kids shouldn't be discipled by TikTok or Instagram, even if it's somebody you like. Like,
Yeah.
no, they should really should be discipled by you. But you have to compete with that because the world is so noisy
Well,
in
not
our
only that,
generation.
but they might catch a clip that skips a lot of the context too, and then that's what they form. That's what
Yeah.
gives them their opinion, and so that's
Yes.
also very dangerous for sure. Well, tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about your curriculum and your tools and the things that you have and who are they there to serve and how does it work and all the things.
My curriculum is for 3 to 6 year olds, 7 to 10 year olds, 11 to 13-year-olds, and 14 to 18-year-olds. So it covers 3 to 18. There are conversations to be had at each of those age groupings. I base them off of my classroom and real world experience teaching. There are a plethora of topics in each curriculum because kids do, as we know, as anybody knows who's been around kids have so many questions. Why about everything. And then that kind of tampers down a bit as they get older, but there's still so many questions swirling in their brain. And so I do confront all of it. There's nothing I'm like super quiet about. Um, they're very approachable videos. They're very consumable. They're not overwhelmingly big, but if you do look at my topic list on the website, which is sexedreclaim.com, you'll see it might feel overwhelming because I do talk about everything. I just want parents to have that option for their kids for what their kids can watch. So it's
Right.
all video lessons. All you do is press play. You don't have to form the conversations. There are resources out there, right, for parents, like how you should do this and let's be empowered to do it and let's go. These are for kids. So it's already made conversations for kids so that even if you feel empowered and encouraged to have a conversation, but then you still don't know how, it's already been created. And every single video has pausing where you press pause literally and you engage on a question. But there's many questions, and either they can journal about that if that's more their style. They can use the workbook I include with it. They can talk to you. They can talk to their sibling in the same age group. It's totally up to how you're able to utilize this curriculum. Some people do it as part of their regular homeschooling. Others, it's as part of their co-op group or in a youth group setting, even with church. Like they'll pick and choose certain videos they want to engage on and have conversation about. So it's totally flexible for your vibe, whatever you have going on, and it never expires. So you'll always have access to those videos once you get them and can use whatever downloadables that come with it as you choose. I'm not prescriptive in that. I just want to provide you with all the lessons and the content so that you don't have to create those conversations or freak out about, shoot, I don't know what is age appropriate. I don't know how to do this. I have an 11-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Like, what's right for what? Don't worry. Like, just press play on their age group and you'll see exactly how I talk about it. And even if you actually don't watch it with your kids for some reason, at least that gives you all the language I used. You can screen everything, you can pick and choose like what you want to watch together.
Well, and speaking of that, can you share a little bit of like what I know, even in the Christian community, there are some certain topics that are, controversial or we believe this or we
Yeah.
believe that or whatever. Can you share a little bit about what lens you come from so parents know before like sitting their kid down? I mean, obviously it's always important as parents to kind of know what we're putting in front of them. So if you could share a little bit on that topic, that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. My lens is biblically based and it also recognizes scientific studies. So, primarily, what I'm talking about with the kids is this biblical lens of God created us, He created us well. We have good bodies, which honor and glorify Him. But we live in a fallen world where sin, our fleshly sin, pulls at us every day to do things that go against His design, to worship self. For example, even in the 3 to 6-year-old content, I'm already talking about identity formation without big words. Like because I feel this way, does that mean that's who I am? No. And here's why. Here's why your feelings aren't always the truth. You can
Mm,
validate your feelings without it being the truth. And that just sets up like by the time they're 11, 12, and they're like, I kind of feel like I'm a boy. Are you really? Why do you feel that way? What's making you feel that way? So I even get at cultural stereotypes, gender stereotypes that aren't biblical, they're cultural. Just because you like wearing certain clothes doesn't mean that you should be gay or you're a boy. But that is some LGBTQ folks' story is like, well, I was kind of pressured by friends and took me years to realize, like, anyway, I guess I'm getting down a rabbit hole, but I have this lens of sin and the original creation, then the fall, and then Jesus. That applies to everything. It just is. And it applies to sex ed too. And so all of my videos are gracious in that they recognize what's going on in the world around us and who our neighbors are, but they still focus on God's truth because God's truth is the truth. And God's truth is loving, actually. It's really good. Doesn't mean it's not tricky to understand or difficult sometimes to live out, of course, but it's possible to
right.
live in that the reality of his goodness and truth. And so I give really practical ways they can love on people and they can care about people and pray about people and discern, but I don't tell them what to do because I'm not the Lord. Like I'm it's going to look different. Like you're suggesting, it does look different for different people, but at the end of the day, the Bible says what the Bible says. And so some issues to me are more open-handed and some are more closed, but that what this does is it doesn't tell you what those are. It sets your family up so that you can have those conversations too. A woman had emailed me recently. This is a very practical example, just to be authentic. She said, you have a video called All Families Are Different or families are different for your 3 to 6 year olds. And I said, yep, I have 2 videos about that, recognizing kind of like my daughter's friend that families do look different. This is why they have different belief systems. What does that mean for us? And she said, I think that you don't emphasize enough that family should look like this. And I'm like, that's fine if you feel that way, that I don't emphasize it enough. I have other families that think I emphasize it too much. So I don't know which one I do, but I feel like I balanced. But anyway, now you can have that conversation with your kids of, but I want to remind you that God's design for family if you feel that I didn't do that enough. Okay. So it does set up families to still get to have those conversations at home. I'm not the end all be all, but I am like delivering the content so that families can have those conversations even from a young age rather than them just going by without ever engaging with them. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the lens. I think hopefully that answers your question. Like it's a
No.
biblical lens, but it's also a gracious lens and it's not prescriptive. I'm like that with abortion too. Like my abortion video is pretty factual on what abortion is and why people get it and what we can do to step into that and care for those because many people get abortions. There will be moms who watch my curriculum who had abortions for many different reasons, right? I always recognize too that some people come to know Jesus later in their life. And I want Christians to be a force of light and salt in that debate, if you will, or in that realm. So I want to help students to do the same thing.
Oh, I love that. That really is so important to me. Okay, one more question. Do you have anything on there? Because I'm sure there are some moms that are maybe in this position or maybe are feeling like they need resources. And I'm not sure if it's something you have or if you have suggestions. If they have a kid that is sort of gender confused at any particular age that they are not sure what to do in that situation.
Yeah. I have adult videos in every curriculum. So, like, what do I do if I walk in on my kid watching porn? How do I talk to my kid about porn? What do I do if my child comes out to me as gay? So I do have videos that come with every single curriculum, doesn't matter the age group you get on and confronting that. There's a ton of resources, in my opinion, for parents who are walking through that. Like who that's their whole niche is to do that. And so somebody ever reaches out, of course, I can say this is a ministry or this is an organization that speaks into that really well and also provides community in that for people who are going through it in the trenches right now.
Yeah.
But I do have content that speaks into that. And I also, of course, because my focus is the kids, I have content that speaks to kids about, yeah, I even have one called What Do I Do If I Think I'm Gay? Or what do I do if I think I'm in the wrong body? And again, it's a gracious approach, but it's a realistic approach of, okay, you're here. That's where you're at right now. Let's get at why you think that. Is it because people are telling you this? Is it because you had an experience? Sometimes people go through trauma and then they start to identify with that trauma. Have they been able to tell anyone that? Do they even know they were in a traumatic situation? Those are real life scenarios too. That doesn't mean all people in this
Right.
category have experienced that, but some have. So I think primarily my focus is the kids, but I do provide content for adults in that too.
That is so, so helpful. Well, I will make sure, but tell us where to find you, where people can come follow you, and where they can find your curriculum. I will obviously put everything in the show notes as well.
My curriculum is available at sexedreclaimed.com. It has free samples. It allows you to pick your age group you're wanting. I have free ebooks on there. And then I also have a resource page where I do list out some organizations as well as a ton of books if you want to start with a book. They're not my books, but they're books I've read or reviewed and enjoyed for kids. But I really think the best thing is not only a book. I think you need more than that. And the continual conversation is what I'm hoping for Christian families as they disciple their kids. And so, like I said, doesn't expire, doesn't go anywhere. You just one time purchase, but it's all on the website. And then I'm on social media too.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure to put those links down there. Well, friends, your action step this week is simple. Go pick one conversation to start with your child. And if you're ready for some tools and guidance, definitely head over to Kristen's website and check out the library that she has. It's honestly such an incredible resource, and I'm so excited. I'm even like thinking in my head right now. I have five boys, ages 7 now, just turned 7 to 20, and I'm like checking in my head. I'm like, which conversations have I had with each of them? Like, I need like a checklist to make
That's tricky. Yeah.
because I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of them, but I'm sure that like I'm missing the ball with some of them. And I feel like curriculum is a great way to do that because then you're making sure you don't miss anything because there's so many different things that is happening in this world and so many different things that is important that they're seeing on their screens, no matter how locked down they are. I mean, there's just so many, there's so much. So Kristen, thank you so much for being here and the work you're doing to equip families in this space. I just am so grateful for you because I know like you have to really be anointed to do something like this. And you also have to be obedient in saying, yes, okay, I'm going to learn how to have the awkward conversations and make them not awkward. And you do that with such grace. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, to
I appreciate
everyone, yeah, of course. To everyone listening, remember that God has trusted you with your children and He equips you to guide them. If you definitely want to make sure that you are super intentional with it. So reach out, follow Kristen online, and until next time, keep walking your kingdom purpose.